Okay, the recording gets started. Yeah, so hello guys, welcome again for the another live session, a live problem solving session for the course Introduction to Semiconductor. Just to give my introduction again, I am Soham Lakhote, third year PhD student at ISC Bangalore. I currently work in the area of analog and RF circuit design. So what we are going to do for this session is we will just start with few conceptual questions where I would like to interact with you guys regarding the some conceptual questions that should be clear to you as per the content that have been covered till now in the course. So I have a first question for you. So let's say you have a diffusion current. Why the diffusion current will be there? Because there will be some gradient in the concentration in the semiconductor material, right? So now let's say you have a particular gas. Let's say there is a chamber, right? And you have gas molecules which are there only in one part of the chamber, and there was some particular membrane that was there which was not allowing these gas molecules to flow to the right, correct? But at t equal to 0, let's say I opened this I opened up this membrane basically. So what will happen is that these gas molecules will flow, and these will continue to flow, this will continue to diffuse into the right area till the concentration becomes equal in the entire volume, right? So now let's say similarly I have a semiconductor material, correct? And there are lot of electrons that are present on one side, and there are hardly few electrons that are present. So my first question to you guys is that will this concentration gradient that is present, so let me draw the concentration gradient. So let's say this is n of x and this is x, correct? So this is how the concentration gradient will look like, correct? So now my question to you guys is, will this concentration gradient will become equal to 0, that is dN by dx, will it become 0 as time progresses? So this was my first question to you guys, and what do you think? And if this doesn't become 0, let's say, so if this doesn't become 0, then you know there will be some diffusion current that will be present. So what if I do this? Let's say this is my semiconductor material and I am having this concentration gradient in the semiconductor material. So if I connect a load resistor across it, will I get a current flowing through this particular resistor? So I have these two questions for you guys. Please unmute yourself and give your thoughts on this question. I don't want, see, even if you give some silly answers, that's okay. I just want to see your thought process, and we will solve this question together, don't worry. And I kindly request to please unmute yourself quickly as we only have 1 hour for the session.
Diffusion current will not be zero.
Diffusion current will not be 0. Yeah, correct. So that means you are saying that the concentration gradient will not become equal to 0 as the time progresses, right? Hello?
Exactly, sir.
Exactly, right? So very good. So now can you give me reason why this is happening? What is helping to maintaining this diffusion? What is helping the semiconductor material to have this concentration gradient maintained? Why it is not falling to 0? In the right hand side I just showed you the membrane diagram, right, where the gas molecules were filled in one part. So they filled out the entire chamber until their concentration became equal in entire volume, right? So now why the same thing is not happening with the semiconductor material over here? Why the concentration gradient is not becoming 0? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I am not sure, sir, but concentration gradient is equal for majority carrier, but for minority, maybe there will be some kind of diffusion. I don't know, sir.
Okay. Okay. Now, the thing is that just think about it. Why this electron? Oh, okay. Why this concentration of electrons that is present over here will be maintained over here? Why they cannot flow? Why they cannot flow? Why the entire concentration cannot flow through towards the left side? What will happen? Just imagine. Let's say this is a N-type semiconductor, right? So what you have doped with? You have doped with the phosphorus or either arsenic, right? So each phosphorus or each arsenic atom will bring with them one electron each, correct? And once that ionization energy, okay, the thermal energy is enough so that all the donor impurities is completely ionized. So what is going to happen? So initially there will be some flow of electrons towards the left side, right? Because that concentration gradient is there. So obviously to satisfy that, as you know, the electrons will flow from higher concentration to low concentration. So what is going to happen? Some electrons initially will flow from here to here. So what is going to happen? Let's say few electrons flew to left part of this side. So what is going to happen? This electron that was brought by these atoms, the phosphorus atoms. So these donors are now going to have that positive charge, correct? Because they lost their electrons. So they had 5 electrons in the outermost orbit, out of which 4 electrons were busy in forming the bonds, correct? Now we were left with only 1 electron, and that electron, corresponding to that electron, there was a positive charge in the nucleus of that particular atom, correct? So what happened because of this is that that positive charge got remained within that atom itself, but since that electron got separated away, what happened? You were left with the immobile positive charges that are present, because atoms cannot move, only electrons and holes that are present, these are the mobile carriers, correct? So your electron got to this side, and you, corresponding to that electron, you were left with this immobile positive charge, correct? Now what will happen because of this is that you have the positive charge ka slab on the right hand side, and corresponding to that you got more number of equal number of electrons on the left hand side. So what is happening is that you got this charge in this region, you also got a charge in this region, correct? Now what is going to happen because of this is that there will be an electric field that was created because of the diffusion itself. So because of the diffusion, you have that positive immobile atoms, that immobile charges that are here, and you have the electrons that are over here. So the region of charges, and that too separated by the distance, you have the field which will be pointing in this direction, correct? Now electrons were moving from right to left, correct? So the force on the electron, which is because of the electric field, is in the opposite direction, correct? So you have the electric field that happened because of the diffusion of electrons in this side, correct? So let's say after some time, few more electrons from here want to go to the left side. What is going to happen because of this? Electron wants to move in the left direction, and the electric field is also in the left direction. So what is going to happen because of this? As you know, the electron experiences the force in the opposite direction as compared to the electric field, correct? So the force on the electron will be on the right hand direction, correct? So this force will prevent the further diffusion of electrons in the left side region, correct? And this electric field existed only because the electrons started to flow from right hand side to the left hand side. This, see, for existence of electric field you need charge density, correct? In a intrinsic, not even intrinsic, let's say in the n type semiconductor material which doesn't have any gradient, the concentration gradient, right? So its charge density is completely neutral. There is no charge that is present. That is the charge enclosed within this volume is zero, correct? Because for every electron you have a corresponding positive charge that is present in the nucleus of atom. So this is the main reason why you say that even though my semiconductor material is n type or it is a p type, it is still neutral, correct? But what happened because of this diffusion is that there is a local charge density that got created. See, within this volume of the entire semiconductor itself, the charge density is still zero, but within this small area that I am telling you, we got a local charge density, correct? And because of that electric field got created. So it stopped the further flow of the electrons from right hand side to left hand side, and because of this the dn by dx won't become zero because of this field itself, correct? Is this clear to you, or do you have any doubts on that? This is very, very important. I guess you must have got some hint regarding this in the PN junction lectures itself. So is this clear, or do you have any doubts with respect to this? Because this is very, very important. Guys, is this clear? Please let me know at least in the chat box, or please unmute yourself quickly.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, got it. Now comes the second question. Can you use these? See, now once we know that the diffusion, that is the concentration gradient, is not going to be zero, right? So that means my diffusion current can't become zero with respect to time, because this concentration gradient is maintained even after a long period of time. Correct. Now my second question is, can you use this diffusion current that is flowing in the semiconductor to get a current across the load resistor? See, this is a very weird question that I am asking, because this question seems like just by taking a single semiconductor slab, I am trying to generate a current source which will dissipate the power in the load resistor. So first of all, just tell me whether this question is making any sense or not. Just by taking a semiconductor slab, I have created a source of energy. Is it making sense, or it is violating the law of conservation of energy? Just tell me this. What is happening? Guys, please respond quickly. We only have 1 hour.
Is violating.
We are violating, correct? So it is not making sense.
Which law? KCL or KVL, or what is violating? I can't understand.
Yeah, we are violating the law of conservation of energy just by taking a semiconductor slab. We are saying that we have created a current source, so it is just a material, and we are saying that yeah, we are creating the energy out of it without giving it energy. See, we have to give energy in some form to create the energy in different form, correct? But what we are doing, we are saying we just took a material and it is acting as a current source, and it can, the current source is not a passive element, it's a voltage source, and your current sources, right? They give the energy, correct? So your resistors, inductors, capacitors, they are the passive elements, correct? So now we are saying something very, very weird over here. So the way to think for this is like, okay, the diffusion current is existing, right? Now just tell me in the equilibrium whether the Fermi level is constant across the semiconductor or it changes. Just tell me this.
Equilibrium will be constant.
Constant.
It will be constant, right? So now your Fermi level is constant. So now just think about it in this manner, कि in the equilibrium there cannot be any current that can flow through the semiconductor. So the total net current through the semiconductor should be zero, because I am not applying any external bias, I am not applying any photo generation on the semiconductor, I am not applying any light on the semiconductor, right? So the net current has to be zero in the semiconductor. So now what is cancelling the diffusion current? So what is your diffusion current? Q dn by dx, correct? Something must cancel this term. Something must cancel this term, and what will cancel this term? Just think about the thing that I have just explained you on the left hand side, right? So total, how many types of different current exists in the semiconductor? One is the diffusion current and another is the drift current, correct? So the total current will be J diff plus J drift, correct? So the total current density will be sum of these two things, right? Does diffusion current exist? Yes, diffusion current exists because I have a concentration gradient. Does drift current exist in this semiconductor? Just tell me this, whether there is any drift current that is present or there is no drift current that is present.
No drift current, sir. No applied bias. Since no applied bias, there will be drift current is not there.
Yeah, just think about it. I had just explained you a few minutes back about this thing where we had a local charge density that are separate.
Current. There will be some drift current.
There will be some drift current, exactly, correct. So now what is going to happen, since this we got some field because of as the electron started to move to the left, we had this local separation of local charge densities which created some field, right? And that is your, what you can say, that is the drift, that is the field, that is the drift field which you have, because when the electrons moves from right hand side to left hand side, the field, diffusion field should have been on the right hand direction, but the field that we got over here, it is in the left hand side direction. So it is opposing our diffusion field's direction, correct? So what is going to happen after some time? Let's say few electrons flew from right hand side to the left hand side. What is going to happen after some time? That the drift component will start existing, and this magnitude of this electric field will start increasing, and after some particular point of time it will become so much that it will just cancel this j diff. The j drift will just cancel this j diff, and the net what you can say, the net current density in the semiconductor will become zero. Correct. So that's why you cannot get you cannot get any current out of this semiconductor, and it is also in correspondence to the law of conservation of energy. You can't just take one material and you say, okay, I have created energy out of it, now I can give that energy anywhere. I have to get the energy by bringing down some from, let's say, what is your battery? It converts the chemical energy into electrical energy, right? We have not generated the electrical energy spontaneously, correct? We have converted one form of energy into another form of energy. So that's the reason I have brought this question, because this concept is very important. I had this doubt in my BTech when I was doing my BTech, like why this concentration gradient is not becoming zero with respect to time, because when you have a gas chamber like this, the concentration becomes equal everywhere after some time. So I hope this question was clear to you. Now I will move to the next question. Now this next question is again in correspondence to what you can say, the law of conservation of energy again. So what is there? You have a PN junction, correct? You have a PN junction, correct? And you have a depletion region. So you have a positive charges on the N side and negative charges on the P side. So it has a inbuilt potential VBI, correct? So now what I am telling you first is that if I connect a load resistor across this, correct? So can a current flow through this resistor, because I have this VBI. Let's say this VBI is around maybe 0.7 volts or maybe 0.68 volts. I don't know. Let's say 0.7 volts, correct? So now if I have this 0.7 volts with me, can I use this 0.7 volts to drive any load? That is, can I use this built-in potential as a voltage source? And the second question is, can we measure this VBI, that is 0.7 volts, with the help of a voltmeter that will be connected across this PN junction diode? So what do you guys think? So can we use this built-in potential for driving any load? First of all, is it making sense that we have a PN junction? It is just like a previous question, right? It is little bit weird. We are just getting one material and we are saying कि we have a voltage source, we have a 0.7 volt battery with us, and out of nowhere we have created this battery, and and we are saying that we want to drive a load with the help of this battery, which is actually that potential is present inside that material. So can we do this, or it is seeming weird, or do you have any logics to counter this argument? Lakshmikanta, Bhuvanesh, any one of you want to say anything?
It's not weird, sir. We can do this, but it depends on the load. If the load can work on mere 0.7 volt, then it's okay. It can act as a battery.
Okay, so I will just give you one more analogy. Let's say I have a battery over here. Let's say this is not from the diode, right? Let's say I have connected this separately across the load, correct? So now the current can flow through this easily, right? Correct? Correct. So see, what is the role of battery? See, battery helps in pushing the electrons across the load, correct? So the rate at which the electrons are coming in the battery and the rate at which the electrons are going out of the battery, it is the same, right? So you can say it helps in it helps in pushing the electrons, basically, correct? So now tell me, is there any where in the PN junction, where is the electric field that is existing? In this region, in this N region, let's say this is region A, let's say this is region B, let's say this is region C. So in which regions the field is existing out of these three ABC? Sorry, you're not audible.
Region B, sir. B.
Oh, in only B region the field will exist, right? So if so in C region and A region there does not exist any electric field because the net charge, there is no charge density that is present in these regions, correct? So now what I want, the only way, what just a minute, shit, something happened.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, it is charges are depleted in that region, in region B. How there will be
Oh,
peace?
sorry.
Since charges are depleted in region, so we call it as depletion region. So how fields existing?
How the field is existing, see, you have the positive immobile ions over there. So what is happening in N region, you have the let's say in N region you have the phosphorus atoms that are present, right? Each phosphorus atom had brought one electron with it, correct? And this one electron, corresponding to this one electron, there was a positive charge that was present in the nucleus of the phosphorus atom. You agree with this?
Sir, yeah.
Correct. Now similarly in the P side I had a boron with me, and there was a one vacancy corresponding to which there was a opposite charge that was present, correct? So now what had happened, the moment I had this P and N junction that got created, so because the there was a concentration gradient for electrons as well as the holes, the electrons that this electrons and the hole, it was a free carrier, right? So it moved across the junction. But now what happened, this electron that left the phosphorus atom, now this phosphorus atom which was neutral, now it had acquired a positive charge, right? Because in the nucleus there was a positive charge, and that positive charge was balancing this the charge corresponding to this one extra electron. But now you moved this electron in the P region, but your positive charge in the nucleus is still there, correct? Now this is a atom and it has a positive charge, and note that atoms does not move, only the free carriers are able to move. So what happened because of this is you expose this phosphorus atoms to this positive charge because you swept away the electrons away from them, correct? So you have this positive immobile charge in the N side, and similarly you have the negative charge in the P side. So now just like what I had explained in the previous slide, since you have these charge densities and these charge densities got separated over here, you have these charge densities, right? And so there is a field that got created, and this is exactly the same concept that I had explained last time. Because of the diffusion you swept away these electrons, but you left away with this positive immobile what you can say, you expose the phosphorus atoms, they left there and they had this positive charge with them. And similarly for boron you have this negative, because the holes moved away into the N region, right? So now since you have those charge densities which are separated by some distance, obviously they will be very close, you got a very huge electric field because of this. Why very huge electric field? Because electric field is inversely proportional to your separation of this positive and negative charges, right? This separation is very small. So in the numericals that sir had solved, you must have observed this depletion width is hardly some less than 1 micrometer or something, around 1 micrometer or something. So just imagine what is the field that got created. See, for having the field you need to have the charge density, and the charge density is present in the depletion region. Now you will ask another question, why the charge density is not present in the P region, that is the region number A or region number C. Now in the region number A you have these phosphorus atoms, they have one electron with them, but corresponding to that they also have this positive what you can say, a charge in the nucleus of the phosphorus atom, correct? Now just answer this question, in the region A, is there anything to sweep away this electron from the phosphorus atom into some different region? Just tell me this one thing. So is there any way that the charge densities are created in the region A and region C? See, I want this kind of separation of the charge densities. I want the what you can say, I want that some kind of local charge density should be present where the charges are imbalanced, that is the positive charges and the net negative charges are not cancelling in that particular region. that is happening only in the depletion region, and I had explained you why that is happening. But in the n region, if you say, obviously there are many free electrons that are present, but corresponding to that there are what you can say, the positive charge is present in the nucleus of that corresponding atom. So the net positive charges and the net negative charges, they are equal with respect to each other, and there is no imbalance for these charges. So there is no net charge that is enclosed in this particular region, and from the Gauss law you must be knowing that your del dot E is del dot D is correct. You got the answer? You got the answer or you didn't get the answer?
I'm getting that. If there is a exact jump in the potential, we will get a electric field, right?
Sorry, can you repeat again?
By Gauss law, if we have a exact jump in that junction, we will get a electric field, right, sir?
What is there in the what jump is there in the junction? What jump you are talking about? Are you talking about you are talking about that jump in the rho, that is the concentration?
Road in charge density, sir.
Yeah, exactly. So that charge density is existing only because of this what you can say, this
Movement of charges.
Yeah, correct. It is existing only because of this
carriers.
Sorry?
Because of these carriers.
Because
Charge
of
carriers.
Yeah, immobile charge carriers, sir. Immobile charge carriers. This phosphorus atoms cannot move, right?
Yeah.
Because they are the part of the lattice. No. Yeah. Correct. So you need some charge density to get electric field across it. So yeah. So now I hope this question was clear. And now the problem is when you are trying to let's say measure the voltage across this. You want to measure this VBI, the built-in potential. You have to connect the probes directly over here. And why you have to connect the probes directly over here? Because there is no electric field that is existing in this C region as well as in this A region. Now what was happening in the case of a battery, correct? You have what is the battery? You have the positive terminal, you have the negative terminal, you have an electrolyte in between, correct? And now you connected some load across it, correct? So your positive here you have a positive charge density, here you have a negative charge density. It was connected directly across the load, correct? So similar should happen when I'm trying to connect a load or trying to connect the voltmeter. I have to directly tap into the regions of positive and negative charge densities to be able to measure this built-in potential or to drive something out of this built-in potential, correct? Now just tell me whether I have any access to tap into this region. I can only get a connection from here, that is a point number X and point number Y, correct? Do I have any provision to get a connection from this region? Do I have any provision to get a connection over here? And if you say that I can drill a hole or I can put something over here, then just note the fact that you are bringing a metal in contact with the semiconductor, so there will be another depletion region because of the contact of the metal and the semiconductor. So just tell me, do I have any provision to tap into this depletion region? Just tell in the chat box or just unmute yourself and tell me.
No, sir.
No, right? So unless and until I have the provision to tap, I cannot measure or I cannot drive the load out of it, correct? So this is a question that this question will be it's a funny thing, but this question our teachers or our external examiners used to ask in our Viva, or in some reference book also you can find some funny question like this, but it helps you to clear your concept. So I hope this question is clear to you. And the next thing is like you must have observed in the excess carrier generation that is we have a semiconductor material with us, correct, and we are shining some photons on it, correct. Now you must have got this term, that is a carrier lifetime, correct. So that is the tau p and tau n. So now what is the significance, what is the physical significance of these carriers? So now what is happening? So this carrier lifetime, what does this carrier lifetime means? It just roughly means that for how much time your carrier will be living. It is just like our death age, right? We all will be dying somewhere in the future. We have some particular lifetime. Like we say that average lifetime is like around for a healthy human will be around 65-70 years or something like that. Correct? So just like similar way, you can imagine that even these carriers will be having their lifetime. Correct? Now, what will be affecting the lifetimes of these carriers? Correct. So now let's say this. I have a particular semiconductor material. It has a band gap Eg. Correct. And let's say this is intrinsic region. Correct. Now the carriers, that is after shining the light over here, the electrons from the valence band, it got jumped into the conduction band. Correct. And why there is a lifetime, because as we know, as there is some generation rate, there is also a recombination rate that is present. Correct. Now let's say this is a Si, right? This is simple silicon. And now let's say while manufacturing this semiconductor material, let's say sir must have told you that we usually use 99.999999% pure silicon, right? Now let's say this 99999 is not there. Let's say it is only 98%. That means there is some defects that are also present. Along with the Si atoms in the lattice, there will be some manganese, some zinc, some other atoms that will be introduced in the lattice as a part of a defect. Correct? So now, as you have studied in the previous week, that these defects will create extra energy levels in the forbidden energy gap. Correct? So let's say the Zn, I have a zinc impurity, and it created a level over here. Let's say I have a manganese impurity, it created a level over here. Correct? So now what is going to happen because of this? See, this lifetime is direct inversely proportional to how quickly recombination is occurring. Correct? The more recombination occurs, the lesser will be the lifetime of the carriers. Correct? And by introducing these defects, what I am going to do, I am allowing these electrons to fall into this energy levels which are above the EV. So electron doesn't have to jump directly from EC to EV. It has now a provision to jump from EC to this impurity level, these energy levels which have been introduced by the impurities. Correct? So now by introducing the defects in the semiconductor, that is by bringing some impurities in the semiconductor, I have introduced energy levels in the forbidden level which are now helping me to increase my recombination rate. Correct? Because there is now a more probability that electron will recombine quickly, because there are levels to fall over here within the forbidden energy band gap itself. And now if my recombination rate is more, the lifetime of the carriers that I am generating, these are the excess carriers that have been generated because of this shining the light. Correct? This lifetime will be reduced now. Now what is the significance of this? Correct? Let's say this is your photo detector material. Let's say this is your photo. Obviously you will be studying this device in the later part of the course. I am just giving you an intuition. Just take this as a rough estimate. So now what is the formula for the excess carrier concentration? You know, in the steady state it is GL into tau p. Correct? This is the lifetime of the carrier. Correct? Now tell me, what is the job of the photo detector? It wants to detect even the weakest of light possible, and corresponding to that, it wants to generate as many excess carriers as possible. Correct? Now to generate as many excess carriers are possible, this delta n has to be high. Correct? To have this delta n to be high, my tau p, the lifetime of the carriers, have to be very high. Correct? Now to have this lifetime of carrier to be very high, I don't want recombination rate to be high, because this tau is inversely proportional to the recombination rate. Correct? Now this recombination rate depends on how many defects you have introduced and how many energy levels you have introduced in the forbidden energy band gap. Correct? To have a very high tau, I need a very less recombination rate, and to have a very less recombination rate, I don't want these defects, and because you don't want these defects, you need to have this kind of a purity in a semiconductor material that you will be using for your photo detector application. Correct? So now we want, just because now as you can see, this tau p is directly affecting the, you can say, a kind of sensitivity of the photo detector. Correct? The lesser this tau p, because let's say you have impure semiconductor, this tau p will be less and your excess generated carriers will be less. So even if I am shining a light, the amount of excess carriers generated will be less, and it will be decreasing the sensitivity of the photo detector. So this was an important concept, because I just wanted to let you know how the lifetime of the carriers also plays an important part in application. So I just connected few dots over and here just to let you know, guys, like that this concept of the lifetime of the carriers is not at all useless. It's there and its applications are there, and this will be clear as you will be studying the more and more of these applications in the future parts of the lecture. So I hope this concept was clear to you. Now let's move on to the what you can say, the numericals, correct? So what is the physical meaning of the area under the curve E of x versus x? Now just let me now just tell me how do you calculate the area under the curve? You use the integration, correct? So what they have asked is like, what is this? What is this? Correct? So now it is very basic question. You must have observed from the notes and even from your high school physics that we have this quantity, correct? So the potential difference that you have, it's nothing but the integral of the electric field with respect to the distance, correct? So what is the correct option out of this? Guys, which will be correct option?
Built-in potential, sir.
Exactly correct. Good. Yeah. So now this is again a small question. So we have a one-sided junction, and they have asked us how the depletion, the width of the depletion will be varying, right? So since they have given it's a one-sided junction and ND is going to be very higher compared to NA. So since ND will be higher, this 1 by ND will be very less, correct? Since this term will be dominating, so W will be directly proportional to what? 1 upon root NA, and it will be proportional to root VBI, correct? So what is the correct option? So we have root VBI over here and root 1 upon NA over here. So option number will be correct, right? So now coming to the question number 12. So the doping concentrations in a uniformly doped silicon PN junctions, okay, they have given us the concentration Na and Nd, and they have asked us just tell us in approximate manner the temperature at which the built-in potential of the built-in potential is 0.95 volts, correct? So now let's do one thing. At 300 Kelvin we know everything, right? At 300 Kelvin we know temperature, we know KT, we know Ni, correct? So first of all, let's calculate the VBI, the value of the built-in potential at this particular temperature, correct? So I am calling this as T1 equal to 300 Kelvin, correct? So what is the formula? KT by Q, what, ln of Na Nd upon Ni square, correct? You have Na with you have Nd also given, and you also know the value of Ni, you know the KT also, correct? So if you just put these values, then you will be getting that VBI 300 Kelvin will be 0.689 volts, correct? So this is the value at this particular temperature, right? Now how will it vary with the temperature? First of all, you have the T over here, Na and D, let's say it remains because they are the donor concentrations, right? And Ni will also change with the temperature. Now how Ni will change? Because you know Ni square is what? NCNV exponential of minus Eg by KT, correct? Now what is the, will this NC and NV will also vary with the temperature, correct? Because this will vary, because NC is what? NC is directly proportional to T to the power 3 by 2. Even NV is directly proportional to the T to the power 3 by 2, correct? So now what we are going to do to solve this question is like, first of all we will calculate this Ni at T1 and Ni at T2, and we will express Ni of T2 as a function of Ni of T1, correct? We are going to do this, and we will then check whether this Ni of T2, whether it is coming out to be higher as compared to this Ni of T1 or not, and correspondingly we will note for VBI also, right? So so what you can do is NC and NV, as you can see, it is proportional to T to the power 3 by 2, correct? So NC, the product of NC and NV will be proportional to T to the power 3, correct? So NC and NV at T2 will be NC NV at T1, correct, into T2 by T1 to the power 3, I have just used this expression proportionality constant. So the moment you divide this NC of T2 by NC of T1, this proportionality constant will also get divided, correct? So you have this kind of thing with you. Now let's use the VBI. KT by Q ln of what? Na Nd upon Ni square is expression I am writing, Nc Nv exponential of minus Eg by Kt, correct? So what will VBI become? VBI will be Kt by Q, correct, ln of NaNd upon Nc Nv plus, see, this is an exponential term and it is present inside the ln, correct? So ln will cancel the exponential, and this Kt that you are able to see, this Kt and Kt will also get cancelled, and we will be left with only Eg by Q, I guess. Yeah, correct. So now we have, see, this term is actually very small, and and this term, just assume for now that Eg won't vary with the temperature much. It may change, but by a very small change, so we can ignore it as of now, correct? So this is our main term now, actually, correct? So if I write it, okay, let me move into the next page itself. So VBI, it became what? KT by Q, just a minute, NAND NCNB plus Eg by Q, correct? So this was at T1. So VBI at T1. So everywhere I will write T1, correct? And so similarly for VBI of T2, it will be what? KT2 by Q ln of NAND upon NCNV of K2, correct, plus Eg by K, correct? Now what I am assuming, since T2 is greater than T1, I am assuming that T2 is M times T1, where M is greater than 1, correct? So obviously this T2 automatically became T1, became greater than T1, correct? So now I will be just putting this term over here. So what VBI of T2 became K M times T1 by Q ln of NAND divided by, what was this, NC NV of T1, correct, into T2 by T1 to the power 3, correct, plus Eg by your Q. Again this T2 by T1 is M, correct? So what it became, VBI of T2 became like M times K T1 by Q ln of NAND upon NC NV of T1 minus 3 times ln of M, correct, plus Eg by Q. So VBI of T2, it became like, if you just expand and write this thing in terms of VBI of T1, what is VBI of T1? This KT1 times ln term. We also have this KT1 times ln term present over here, correct? So if you write it in terms of VBI1, then you will be getting something like this. Just a minute. M times VBI of T1, correct, minus 3 times KT1M by Q ln of M, correct? And you can write it like this: M times VBI of T1 minus 3 KT1 by Q ln of M. So finally, after doing this much, we got the expression for VBI T2 in terms of VBI of T1, correct? Now we will use a common sense. What is the general value of the built-in potential? It's around 0.7 volts, correct? I'm just taking any value for silicon, just assume this type of a value, correct? Now what is happening is like, let's say you have this term over here. Now I wanted to see, okay, let's say T1 was how much? 300k. So what is the value of T2? T2 is how much? 600k. Let's say it's a double, correct? So now I just wanted to see whether this term will be greater than VBI of T1 or no. So for this we have to just estimate how big this term is, correct? So KT by Q, KT1 by Q So since T1 is around 300, we know this is around 0.026, correct? And if I multiply it with 3, and even if I multiply it with the ln of 2, correct? So this difference, if you take and if you multiply this value with the m, that is 2, you will find that this difference is not a very substantial compared to what we have over here. So after taking the difference and multiplying it by the factor 2, which is equal to m, you will see that VBI of T2 is greater than VBI of T1, correct? So now VBI of T1 we had calculated, right? See, VBI of T1 we had calculated at 300 Kelvin, it is 0.69 volts around, correct? So VBI of T1 is 0.69 volts, correct? And what they have given is like the built-in potential is 0.95 volts, correct? So we clearly know if the temperature is double now, the VBI of T2 has to be greater than VBI of T1, correct? So now they have given that this is 0.95 volts, hence we know T2 must be greater than T1, correct? So T1 was given as 300K, so the temperature must be greater than 300K, only then and only this VBI can increase to this value, correct? So the correct option is greater than 300K. I know this was a little bit of kind of a derivation kind of thing, so if you have any doubts, you are free to ask, or else you can even watch the recording, and if you have any doubts, then you can come back to me in the next lecture. If you have any doubts, then you can ask. I will move to the next question. So yeah, so what we have been given over here, consider a uniform n-type bar of, it is an n-type semiconductor with a thin sheet of negative charge that has been embedded. So this is the thin sheet of negative charge that is present at x equal to 0. This charge is fixed in the lattice and cannot move. So it is like, what you can say, it is like a space charge, correct? Because it is fixed in the lattice. This forces the majority carrier electrons to rearrange and satisfy Poisson's equations. So what does that mean? Is like, you know, the majority carriers in the n-type semiconductor materials are electrons, correct? But because of this, what you can say, the fixed negative charges, the electrons around x equal to 0 will be getting repelled away from this x equal to 0, correct? Because the negative repels, correct? So what you will be left with, this is an n-type material, right? So we have the phosphorus atoms, so you are sweeping away one electrons from the phosphorus atoms which are very near, which are very near to x equal to 0, correct? So what you will be left with is the immobile positive ions, that is the exposed p atoms, phosphorus atoms with no electrons with them, and even they are immobile now because the atoms cannot move, correct? So how the charge density will look like, let me help you with this. This is a negative one, so this doesn't have any width, correct? So I can represent it with the help of a impulse, correct? Because even the impulse doesn't have any width, correct? And around this I have a positive charge density, correct? So I will be having some positive charge density over here and some positive charge density over here, correct? And the value of this sheet charge density, that is means what you can say, per centimeter square, correct? So this Qn is there, and we have to, what we have been asked, let me check. Okay, first of all, they are asking us what is the profile of the electric field that this will represent. So as you know, dE by dx is equal to what? Rho by epsilon, correct? Now whenever rho will be positive, the slope of the electric field will be positive, correct? So over here, let me just draw quickly. So for this region, I have positive charge density with me, so the slope must be positive, correct? So from here to here, I have this. Now what is going to happen at x equal to 0, that you have a sudden impulse, that the negative charges you have, correct? Now this rho, it will be replaced with the impulse function, correct? That is del of x upon epsilon. Now can any one of you quickly tell me what will be the integration of impulse function? Step function, right? Step function, correct? So when I integrate the, so I will be getting the step function. And what step function? Because this is the negative. See what is going to happen instantaneously at x equal to 0 itself. I will be getting a large decrease in the amplitude, correct, corresponding to this integration. So from here my electric field will be suddenly moving down because of the step function that I have over here at x equal to 0, correct. And from over here I again have the positive charge density, correct. So again the slope must be positive. So the only way the slope can be positive is like this, correct. So the electric field profile should look something like this, correct. And now just a small quiz for you guys. Now tell me, if I take a integration of this curve, that is e of x dx, what I will get? I should get the built-in potential, correct. Now, can any one of you please quickly tell me what will be the area under this curve? Note that the charge densities will be the charge densities will be equal because the charge should be balanced everywhere, correct. So even though you are seeing that the slope, this width is higher, actually let me denote this width is a, and even this width is a, this is b, and even this should be b, correct. So the areas, these two areas are actually equal. Now tell me what will be the area under this curve. Will it be positive, will it be negative, or will it be 0?
Negative of half into B into A.
Okay, see, for here I have a negative area, correct. I have the negative half into a into b, correct. But what about here? I have two triangles. I have two triangles with me, correct. One is having the positive area and one is having the negative area, correct.
Cancel, sir. Zero.
They will cancel, right. So the built-in potential should be
Yeah.
coming out to be 0, correct. If you want to derive the equations and you want to calculate this literally, then you are free to move, but that's not how we want to solve the questions, because we will also be having some time restrictions on us, and even when you give the exams, right. So we want to solve it in as easy manner as possible. So the area under this curve should be 0. That's why the built-in potential should also come out to be 0. And now let's quickly do this thing. We will apply the charge neutrality now. So this Qn is present, right. So this Qn, that is the negative charge density, it should balance out, correct. So let's say this is W, or not W, sorry, this is, let's say, X, and even this will be X, correct. Because see, this is the negative charge density is present over here, right. So the electrons will be repelled away from right hand side as well, from left hand side as well. So this X and this X must be equal over here. So, and what was this? This is Nd, correct. So this will be equal to Q into Nd, correct. The what I'm saying, the amplitude over here. So this what will be, this become Q into Nd. Note that this is still in Cm to the power -3. I have to multiply it with the X, correct. Yeah, so this will be plus Q Nd into X. So what this became, Qn is equal to 2Q Nd into X. But note that the depletion width is this, it is 2x, correct. So Qn became Q into Nd into W, correct. So the depletion width became Qn upon Qnd, correct. So we got the electric profile, we got the built-in potential, and we also got the width of the depletion region, correct. So these were the three questions that were actually asked. So as you can see, this was the correct answer. Then in the next you can see this Qn upon Qnd is the correct answer, and in the next you can see the built-in potential, we got the 0. So this was the correct answer. Okay, I hope this question was clear to you, and I know it may be little bit shocking that the built-in potential is coming out to be 0, but if you're what you can say, that you are able to draw the charge densities and electric field profiles properly, then it must be very easy for you, correct. Now let me see the next question. Yeah, okay. So this is the next question. So let's say what has been asked to us. So the electric field profile has been given, and they have mentioned some peak electric field values as well as the depletion region widths also on N side and P side. They have mentioned. So so it is a NP junction, right? So now it must be something like this, correct? So so you must be having the positive charges over here, immobile charges. Only then the electric field can increase like this, correct. So it is looking like this. Now can any one of you please tell me how can I calculate the doping density on the P side in a very easy manner? Very easy manner. I don't want to do any integration. I don't want to do anything. Can you just tell me how can I find the values of Na and Nd? What I have to do? I will just help you. Your d by dx is equal to what? Rho upon epsilon. Correct? Now just tell me what can I do? Guys, any hints? See, I just want to check your approach. I don't want final answers. Even if you want to say something, that's okay.
Equilibrium condition, if you will take Na is equal to Na Ndxn is equal to Nx something like this.
Yeah, correct. You are going right way. Now just tell me how can I use this equation? What is the d by dx? What does the d by dx means?
Slope.
Yeah, correct. Slope, exactly. The d by dx means slope, correct. And what I have been, I have been given the profile, correct. So can I calculate the slope? Can I calculate this slope very easily, right? Because this is 0, right? This x is 0. I know this x. I know the value of e over here. I also know the value of e over here, correct. And and what is the rho? What is the rho? So you have n over here, you have p. So just to simplify, let me draw the charge density for you as well. So what it will look like? This is your qnd, and this is what your qna, correct. You have the positive charges over here, and you have negative charges over here, correct. So this is q into nd, correct, on the left hand side. So your de by dx should be q nd upon what? Epsilon, correct. So now this slope is what? It will be like 1.12 into 10 to the power 4 divided by what? This 0 minus of minus xn, it's 0.37 into 10 to the power minus 4. So if you just calculate this slope, I guess I don't have the direct value of the slope now. What I will do, okay, I will take these things over here. I just want to calculate ND, right? So this 1.12 into 10 to the power 4 divided by 0.37 into 10 to the power minus 4 into what is the epsilon that has been given? Epsilon, it is SI, right? Epsilon is 11.7 into free space constant 8.85 into 10 to the power minus 14, correct. This is in farads per centimeter if you want the units. And then I have to also divide it by the value of q, 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19, correct. So this will yield the value of nd, and it will come around to be 1.9589 into 10 to the power 15 cm to the power minus 3, right. Now someone had suggested me that I should use that charge neutrality concept, correct. So now I will use that one, okay. So what you know from the charge neutrality, q into xn into nd should be equal to q into xp into na, correct. The q will get cancelled. Do I know the value of nd? Yes, I know. Do I know the value of xn and xp? These xn values and xp values have been given to me, correct. So can I calculate the na with the help of this? Obviously I can calculate, right. So xn by xp into nd, right. And if you put all the values of xn, xp and nd, then you will be getting value of na to be 9.92, oh sorry, 9.9286 into 10 to the power 14 cm to the power minus 3. So this is the value of nd that you will be getting, and I will also write na along. Oh sorry, not nd, na. Yeah, nd is already calculated. Sorry. Sorry, can you repeat again?
Just he told it is NA, not ND, sir. Then
Yeah. Thanks for the correction. Yeah. Sorry, my apologies. Yeah. So this is the value of ND, correct. Now we have calculated the values of Na as well and Nd as well. So I guess this is what has been asked in the question number 4a and 4b, correct. Yeah. Now coming to this question, if the voltage is 0 at x equal to xp, then what is the voltage at x equal to 0? So you know what is the value of voltage minus E times, it is the area under the curve, right? And let's say I want this voltage between 0 to xv, correct? Let me check where is the xv and where is the 0. Yeah, xp is greater, correct? Yeah, cool. So now what I can write, this will be v of xp minus v of 0. So what has been given to me, if the voltage is 0 at x equal to xp, so this is 0. So this directly become equal to minus times v of 0. So what is this? What is this? This is just the area under the electric field curve between the 0 to xp, right? So what is the area under the curve between 0 to xp? It's a triangular profile, correct? So half into base into height is the formula, correct? So it will be what? Half into xp into e of 0, correct? Everything has been given to me. Even e of 0 they have given 1.12 into 10 to the power 4, right? So if you put everything over here, then you will be getting v of 0 to be equal to 0.4088 volts. So I hope this question was clear to you. And I guess I had some few more questions which I wanted to interact, but I guess we don't have much time, so it's better that we stop over here. And what I'm going to do, like I don't know how many people were there in the at the start of the lecture, but I had said, since my voice was not my voice was not recorded in the last recording session, what I had told you guys is like, just give me 15-20 minutes in this today's session. I will extend this by 15 minutes and I will just go through the problems of the last session, so that at least the concepts will be clear and you guys can work out the problems yourself, as I have already solved the problems and you have the notes with you, right? So I'll be going to the last session's PPT now. If you have any doubts till now, then I'm happy to answer your doubts. If not, then I will be moving to the last problem solving session. Do you guys have any doubts? Please feel free to ask.
Previous question where you got that impulse charge,
Haha.
that can you just the first, yes, that dE by dx is equal to rho by epsilon impulse. That can you explain a little bit how you got impulse?
Yeah, correct. So see, what they have given is like they have given me that a negative charge sheet has been embedded, a thin sheet of negative charge, correct? A thin sheet means a very thin sheet. It doesn't have any thickness, correct? So it's so thin that I cannot define the width over here. This width is tending to 0, correct? So we generally model this kind of functions whenever they have been given ki this exists only at this particular point at x equal to 0, correct? It doesn't have any width. That means you have function which will be looking like this, correct, at x equal to 0. So this is the impulse function. I don't know if you are familiar with the impulse function. Have you done the course on signals and systems?
Sir, I know impulse function.
You know the impulse function, right? Correct. So so that's why we got the impulse function over here, and the impulse function is our charge density, right? See, we write this rho, what we write this as q into nd, or we write it as what, the q into na, correct? So that's why and why you write this, because this was present like this was just like a, what you can say, a limited step function. Limited step function means something like u of t minus t naught, correct? So it will look something like this. It will exist only till t naught, correct? And that's why you wrote, and this its amplitude was qna, correct? So this density, the charge density you have, its function, if you wanted to write, it will be looking something like this, correct? So in the similar manner, what I wrote, since it's a impulse now, that's why I have written it like this. I just replaced it with the impulse function. So when you that's why when you integrate this thing now, what you can say, if you integrate this kind of a if you integrate this kind of function, that's why you are getting some ramp over here, correct? Because it's a u of t, because the integration of the step function is the ramp function, right? Similarly, when I am inserting a delta function, that is the impulse function over here, it's obviously it's going to be a step function, correct? So a step function means a sudden change in the level. So if you can see at the origin itself, you have a for a normal PN junction, let's say you have a profile like this, the charge density, correct? So there is a sudden change is there, right? That sudden change is represented by your step function, correct? So similarly, when I integrate this impulse function, there will be sudden change. That sudden change will be represented by this step function. So I'm just moving on the y side at that particular value of x itself. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Yeah. Any more doubts, guys?
No, sir.
Okay, no. Okay, great. So I will be moving to the last session's PPT. Just a minute. Is NPTEL Week 3 live session screen visible? Is the PDF visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah, so this was the first question, and what was asked is like, first of all, they had given us a semiconductor material which was in the equilibrium, and in the next case, what they have given it is in the non-equilibrium conditions, and it has been given. You can see in the non-equilibrium condition, and they have also given the Quasi-Fermi levels. So from there itself, you know that the semiconductor is not in the equilibrium, correct? So what they had asked is like, what are the electrons and holes densities in the equilibrium condition and as well as the non-equilibrium condition. So for equilibrium condition, the law of mass action holds, and for what you can say in the non-equilibrium condition, it doesn't hold. But our basic equations of that Fermi energy difference is kT ln n upon ni, and those type of equations are valid everywhere, correct? So what I have done, I have just taken this equation that you are seeing, correct? So I have written these equations for the EFN and EFP, and from there I am going to calculate the value of n, because I know everything. I know Ni, I know Kt, I know what is the difference between EFN and EFI, because that has been marked in the question in the figure B if you look. Okay, so I got the concentration of N and I got the concentration of P by using these formulas, correct? But what is this concentration? It is in the non-equilibrium, right? So this concentration is equal to what? Your equilibrium concentration plus the excess carriers that are generated somehow, I don't know. These excess carriers may be generated by the photogenesis or some any other procedure. So this N concentration that you are seeing, it's the equilibrium plus excess carrier concentration, right? Now my task is, now I have got two equations. They are so for N I have N naught plus delta N is some value, and for P I have P naught plus delta P equal to some value, correct? Now my job is to find this N naught delta N and P naught delta P. See, for case of non-equilibrium, I cannot apply the law of mass action, correct? But for the case A, where there is no there is an equilibrium, I can still apply the law of mass action, correct? So what I'm going to do, I have this EF minus EFI that has been given to me. So from this EF minus EFI difference, what I am going to do, I will first calculate the concentration of electrons using this formula, correct? And after that, what I will do, since I know the N naught now, I will apply the law of mass action and I will calculate the P naught, correct? So once I know the equilibrium concentrations, I can put those values in the equation number A and equation number B, so that I can find the delta P and delta N, correct? So this is the concept that I had used in this question, and you will easily get the answers. And yeah, so that has been asked. So delta and delta P, and as well as the N naught and P naught, correct? Now coming to the next question, note that this is a little bit tricky question, and I am giving you guys some homework for this question. So what they have asked is like, a bar of silicon is there which has been doped with the boron concentration, that is an acceptor, and assumed to be fully ionized. It is exposed to the light such that the electrons hole pairs are generated throughout the volume of the bar. Throughout the volume means there will not be any diffusion, correct? So in the equation number first, you can see this dou square delta NP by dou x square term will be 0, correct? They have given the generation rate and they have given us some lifetime as well, right? And what they have asked is like the approximate product of the steady state electron and hole concentration. Note the steady state. What does the steady state means? So the steady state means the concentration will not change with the time, correct? So this dou by dou t term will also become 0. So the delta NP will be nothing but your generation rate into carrier lifetime that we had seen earlier, correct? So now the product of NP will be nothing but the N at equilibrium plus the excess carrier plus P into excess hole concentration, correct? So now if you just substitute these values, how I know the delta P, because I know this excess carriers that have been generated by multiplying the generation rate and the lifetime of the carrier, correct? So if I just multiply this and if I put it in this formula, you will get the answer. But I have a doubt in this question. Okay, my doubt is like you know this minority carrier, this differential equation for the minority carrier diffusion is only valid for low carrier injection, correct? That is the concentration of the excess carrier should be much less than the concentration of electrons that is already present, correct? Now what is the value of the delta n that you are getting over here? Let me see it's 10 to the power 16. And what is the concentration of the equilibrium holes that you have? It is also 10 to the power 16. So can any one of you please tell me whether this is a case of low carrier injection or not? Is it the case of low carrier injection? Can any one of you unmute? Sorry? Is it the case of low carrier injection? See guys, please interact, we don't have much time. Hello. Is it the case of low carrier injection or not?
We are not clear with low carrier injection.
It's not a low carrier injection, right? Yeah. So it's, you are saying something else or you are saying the same thing? Bhuvanesh?
Sir, we are not clear with low carrier injection, sir.
Can you repeat? Your voice was breaking a little bit. Hello?
So we are not clear with what is low carrier injection. I am not clear with low carrier.
You are not clear with the low carrier injection. Okay, see, the low carrier injection means, let's say you have a semiconductor slab, you are shining a light on top of it, right? So what is going to happen because of that shining of the light is like you are going to get excess number of electrons and holes, correct? That is represented by this delta n, correct? Now this delta n, that is the excess carriers that have been generated because of this shining of the light on the semiconductor. If these excess carriers become so large in number that it is very much comparable to the electrons that you have, that is in any intrinsic semiconductor or anything, or maybe n-type semiconductor, anything that you take, correct? So if it becomes comparable to that, then that is not the case of the low carrier injection. So basically it is like these excess carriers, we are injecting it by shining a light, correct? So that is why it is called as a carrier injection. And the low level carrier injection means that this excess carrier concentration should be much less actually. So now in this case, what we have done is
Low carrier injection is not here in this.
is not here, correct? So but the problem is the question everywhere, whatever I have seen and the way I have solved, the answer is coming only if you apply these formulas. Because for high carrier injection levels, I don't know, because even when I went through the reference books, I didn't get much. So this solution can be only valid if you apply these conditions, and these conditions have been derived from this equation, right? What is this equation? Minority carrier diffusion equation, correct? So this equation itself is valid for low carrier injections. So this equation won't be valid if your excess carriers are too large, correct? So this is a homework for you guys, and even I had tried searching it but I didn't get much thing. That please try to search if you are able to get a good explanation for this, because this is the way the question has been solved everywhere. And but a common sense tells us that this is not the case of the low carrier injection and we cannot apply this differential equation. So this is the homework for you guys, and please let me know if you find anything. I will be grateful to learn if I have missed out something. So now the next question was, it is just the concept that we are turning off the light source and turning on the light source. So you must be knowing when the light was shined, we had the steady state excess carrier concentration, which was given as Gp into tau p, correct? Now when I turned off the light, this excess carrier concentration started to decay, correct? And the way it decays is in the exponential manner, correct? And this has been taught very well in the lecture, correct? But what happens if I do the opposite? If I turn on the light at t equal to 0 seconds, so our common understanding says, okay, we have a RC circuit, we were giving some input. Now what happens when we stop giving the input? So it will decay, right? The voltage, it will start to decay. But now if I'm giving a if I'm applying the source at t equal to 0, that means I have started charging the RC circuit, correct? So the way we will after turning on the light source, we should reach to a steady state, correct? And that steady state concentration, it is just like it is a final value of the voltage across the, what you can say, capacitor or something, because it will start charging if I apply a source at t equal to 0, correct? So applying the similar analogy, you can see this it's 1 upon 1 minus negative exponential. So it's a charging exponential graph, and this is the final value, that is a steady state value. That's why I have written value at t equal to infinity. Now why I have mentioned over here, because you will find many questions in the Donald Niemann or maybe in the any other book where there will be questions like they are turning on the light source at some point, turning off the light source, and again they have started turning on the light source. So it's a little bit tricky if you don't understand this concept very well. So I will strongly suggest you to go back to those problems in the Donald Niemann's reference book if you want to take a shot at solving those type of questions. So the next question was regarding this. So it was a gate question, and what they have mentioned is like they are applying a light source on this semiconductor material, and and what there are, let me check the question. So the uniformly doped silicon bar of length L, donor concentration is given, and the electron and hole pairs are generated at the rate which itself is not constant, and the value of GL naught at x equal to 0 is given, whole lifetime is given, assuming a linearly decaying steady state excess hole concentration. So first of all, what is this funda of linearly decaying concentration? So as you know, the concentration should decay, but mostly what you are seeing, it's an exponential decay, correct? So now if this x is very small, and if I apply a series expansion on this exponential, I will be getting some terms like 1 minus x plus x square by 2 factorial or something like this, correct? So if I ignore the terms of x square, x cube, everything, and if I just remain with this term, that means it is a linearly decaying thing, right? So for very small value of x, you can approximate that the exponential decay is very much similar to the linear decay. So that's the first funda that I wanted to explain. And what they have asked is like the magnitude of the diffusion current density. So first of all, what is the diffusion current density formula? See, this is the acceptor, right? So you have the holes as the majority. No, wait, let me check. The uniform, it's a donor concentration, correct? So the diffusion current density, so the diffusion current density, it's a minority, correct? Minority carriers will be diffusing. So now what is going to happen over here? We want this dou by dou x of p of x, correct? So first of all, I have to write this p as a function of x. So how can I write the p as a function of x? They have clearly mentioned that the linear decay is happening. So the p as a function of x, and what they have mentioned is that x equal to L, the concentration is going to 0, correct? So if you just use that y is equal to mx plus c formula or something, even in using the common sense, you will be getting that the concentration at x equal to 0 times 1 minus xl. So if I put x equal to L, this will be 0, and if I put x equal to 0, then this will be dou p of x equal to 0, correct? So that's the p of x as a function of x. So the moment you put over here, then this d by dx, this minus x by L will become minus 1 by L, and your d of dx of this p of x will be equal to minus dou p of x equal to 0. That is a concentration at x equal to 0 divided by L, correct? So if you put this equation number 2 over here, correct, and so you will be left with equation number A, correct? Now the only thing that I don't know is delta p of x equal to 0. That is how many minority carriers are generated at x equal to 0. Now see, the light has been shined for long period of time, correct? So that means the carriers must have reached their steady state concentration. So that's why for steady state concentration, it is equal to GL times tau p, correct? So if you put what is the GL, as we have seen, the GL itself was varying with the distance of x, but I want the value of GL at x equal to 0. So the GL of x equal to 0 will be nothing but GL naught, and GL naught has been given to me. So you can easily find the delta P of x of 0. So you just put this delta P of x of 0 in this equation number A, and you will be getting this answer of minus 16 ampere per centimeter square. So I hope you were clear with this question. The next question was again a gate question. It was as a silicon sample is there and a uniform donor density, so it's a n-type semiconductor and is illuminated uniformly, correct? What do you mean by illuminated uniformly? So and the optical generation it is there and it is there throughout the sample, correct? So throughout the sample and uniformly, so when you combine this, that means if the excess carriers are generated throughout the samples, that means there is no chance of having a diffusion, correct? Only if the excess carriers are generated at a particular part and the sample is long enough, then only then carriers will start to decay and there will be diffusion, correct? So this term itself will become equal to 0 and the light has been turned off. So for t greater than 0, even my generation rate is 0 now, correct? So this dou by dou t of delta Pn will be nothing but this minus of delta Pn by tau p. So you obviously know from our lecture notes like when you are left with this equation, it is obviously a decaying exponential, and this is what I have written over here if you can see. So now what has been asked is like the whole concentration at t equal to 0 and the whole concentration at t equal to 0.3 microseconds, correct? So to know this, I first have to know this dou p of t equal to 0. For dou p of t equal to 0, the light was on from a long period of time, correct? So if the light is on from the long period of time, that means steady state has already been reached. Since steady state has already been reached, I can directly use this delta p is equal to GL times tau p formula, correct? And if you use this, then you will get that at time t equal to 0, this excess carrier concentration was around 1.5 to 10 to the power 13. Now you have dou p of t equal to 0 with you, you have tau p with you. The only thing is that in the question they have asked for t equal to 0, that is a t equal to 0 and t equal to 0.3 microseconds, correct? So the moment you put these values, you will be getting this answer, correct? At t equal to 0, you know this is 1.5 to 10 to the power 13, and at t equal to 0.3 you will be getting this answer, correct? Now yeah, so this was it, and yeah, so this was a very easy question that has been asked in the GATE 2020. So what they have mentioned is like you have been given a junction like this Pn n plus P double plus, correct? So you can think of this P double plus as some kind of a metal. So now what you have been asked is like what is the energy band diagram? So the way we had solved it is like the first of all they had mentioned that the equilibrium band diagram, correct? So for equilibrium band diagram, you know that the Fermi level cannot change. The Fermi level needs to remain constant, correct? So the option number B and option number C are directly eliminated because EF is not constant, correct? And now the next thing that we had done is to check it is we had checked this second region and third region. So what we had told ki okay, n plus region is there and n region is there. So the Fermi level in the third region should be closer to the EC, the conduction band, as compared to the second region, correct? So just let's look at the option number A and option number D. So can you tell me in which of the options the Fermi level is closer to the conduction band as in the third region as compared to the second region? Is it option number A or is it option number D? Guys, please respond quickly. We have already shot up by a lot of time. Guys, any answers?
Yes, sir.
A, sir. Yeah, correct. So the A is the correct answer because the Fermi level is very close to the conduction. Very good. Yeah. So that's how we had solved this question. So I hope this was clear. Now in the next question, what has been there is that the whole concentration in the silicon varies from x equal to 0 to x equal to 0.01 centimeter. The whole diffusion coefficient is given and the current density has also been given, correct? So the whole concentration at x equal to 0 is given, and what has been asked, what is the whole concentration at x equal to 0.01 centimeter? So it is varying linearly, correct? So it can be either of increasing slope, or it can be either of decreasing slope, correct? So now we have to figure out whether it is a varying increasingly or varying decreasingly. So we have been given one value, that is a diffusion current density is positive 20, correct? But you know the diffusion current density is minus of q times dp into dou p by dou x, correct? So this j diff can only be positive if this dp by dx is negative, correct? So dp by dx is negative, that means the whole concentration must be decreasing linearly as a distance, correct? So what we are going to do is we are again going to write p of x, p as a function of x, correct? So for that I need to know this p of x. I have written it like p of x is mx plus c, correct? Now I can easily calculate the slope. The only thing is that I don't know the value of whole concentration at x equal to 0.01. So what I have done, this difference itself, y2 minus y1, I had assumed as delta p, correct? And this m becomes minus of 100 times delta p, correct? And I don't know the value of c, but do I even need it? Because I'm going to differentiate the p with respect to x. So this c, I don't even need it because its derivative is going to be 0. So dp by dx is what? Minus 100 times delta p. dp by dx is given to you. So from there you can get the value of delta p. Delta p is nothing but p of x equal to 0 minus p of x equal to 0.01. You know the p of x equal to 0, correct? You know the p of x equal to 0. So from there only this term is unknown now, correct? So from there you can get this answer easily. And coming to the next question, what has been there in the n-type silicon, the Fermi energy level varies linearly with distance over a short range, correct? So what they have given at x equal to 0, the difference between the Fermi and the intrinsic Fermi is 0.4, and at x equal to 10 to the power minus 3, the difference between the Fermi and intrinsic Fermi is 0.15 times EV. So the difference is decreasing, right? So you know the EF will remain constant, correct? EF cannot change at equilibrium. The only thing that is changing is EFI. So EFI must be of increasing nature because this difference is decreasing with the distance. So that is what I have written over here. The EFI is having an upward slope, and similarly EC will also be having the upward slope, correct? So what they have asked, write the expression for the electron concentration over the distance, correct? So now how will I write it? Write the electron concentration versus the distance, correct? For me the difference between the EF minus EFI is changing with the distance, correct? Now first of all let me help you visualize the EF. What you are able to see over here, the difference between the EC and EF is very low at x equal to 0 and is higher at x equal to 10 to the power minus 3 centimeter. So the concentration of electrons at x equal to 0 is higher, correct? It is higher, and over here it's lower, correct? So that's how your electron concentration will be varying. So to get the concentration of electron as a function of x, we know I have to first express the electron concentration as a function of energy, because the difference between EF minus EFI itself is changing with the distance, correct? So I have just used this formula, and since this distance, the EF minus EFI is changing with the x, my electron concentration will also be changing with the x, correct? Now EF is constant, EFI is increasing, so EF minus EFI will be having the negative slope, correct? So this is what I have written over here. It is having the negative slope, correct? And if you put the boundary conditions, what is boundary condition? At x equal to 0, I know the difference. At x equal to 10 to the power minus 3, I know the difference, correct? So if you put this, then you will be getting the expression of delta E like minus 250x plus 0.4. So the moment you put this delta E equation, this is delta E, the f of x is delta E, correct? So if the moment you put this expression in equation number 1, you will be left with this equation, correct? So we have calculated how the electron concentration is varying with the distance, correct? Now the second question that they had asked, if the electron diffusion coefficient is this, calculate the electron diffusion current density at two different values, x equal to 0 and x equal to 5 into 10 to the power minus 4, correct? So now we will use this value of n itself, because what is the diffusion current density formula? Q into dn into dn of dn by dx, correct? Now we will just differentiate it, and what you have to do, you have to just put those two values of x in this equation, and you will be getting the j diff value at x equal to 0 as well as at x equal to 5 into 10 to the power minus 4, correct? And this is the concept that I had exactly explained in detail in today's lecture, that the electric field that prevents the further diffusion of carriers, correct? You had the carriers, I had told you there will be a drift electric field that is a result as a process of the diffusion itself, and they will be cancelling out with each other, right? And if you just put this equal to 0, and if you substitute the equations, you will be left with this value of you will be left with this expression of electric field. Now why I have told you to do this, because we have a numerical coming up for with respect to this concept. So the first part of this question, in gallium arsenide, the donor impurity concentration varies as a distance, and they have given the values. So first of all, they have asked us to derive the expression of electron diffusion current density versus the distance, right? So the electron diffusion current density, it has that dn by dx term, correct? This dn by dx term will be there, and n varies as a x, correct? So this j diff will also be varying as a function of x. So this is what they have asked us to do, correct? So we know the expression of n as a function of x. You can calculate the dn by dx, correct? And you just put it over there. So you will be left with this this expression, correct? Now after you put it, you will be, after you substitute all the values, you will be left with this equation number maybe a, correct? And now what they have asked us in the second part, determine the induced electric field that generates a drift current density that compensates the diffusion current density. So what they have asked us, okay, I already know the drift current density, diffusion current density, they will be cancelling each other. So just calculate the electric field at that point, that beyond which the diffusion will stop happening, correct? So this is what the formula that I had already derived, correct? So I will directly use this formula, and this formula, after using, you will be easily get this value of 2590 volts per centimeter, correct? And that's it. We have come to the end of this session, and I hope the the problem, I just quickly went through the problems because I just wanted to explain the concepts to you. You already have the notes with you. So sorry for the long session. If you guys have any doubts, then please let me know, or else we will close the session in few minutes. Guys, any doubts?
No, sir.
No? Okay. Was it too fast, or it was boring? Because sorry, I had literally yeah, yeah.
So can we have instead of
No,
P
sir.
and
Thank you
N,
very much.
NP junction?
Sorry, can you repeat again, Bhuvanesh?
Can you have a NP junction, sir, instead of PN junction?
No, sir.
We are saying PN junction because of
NP junction and
so
PN
current.
junctions, yeah.
Yeah. Why we are calling PN junction is current to flow from positive x direction. But why we are not calling NP junction, sir?
Hey, you can call it anything, man. It's it won't matter. Even if you call NP junction or PN junction, no, it won't matter. See, I will tell you. Just a minute. Uh, People call NP junction as well, but normally since everyone starts calling it as a PN junction, so it's not a big issue even if you call as a NP junction. So where is the numerical? Yeah, see, are you able to see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, see, SINP junction, correct? People have called it as NP junction as well. So normally, but since most of us call it as a PN junction and it's there in everywhere in the literature, we usually write it as a PN junction only. And maybe what you have said is correct. Maybe the current, when you apply a positive bias when you apply a voltage across the PN junction, so the current usually flows from the intended current flows from the P to N direction. So that's why maybe what you said is correct. That's why we may be calling it as a PN junction. But even if you call it as a NP junction, I don't think it should be causing any problem.
Right, sir. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, guys. Yeah. Thank you so much for attending the session. Sorry for taking so long, but I don't want to compromise with the quality because it was my mistake that I was not able to record it properly in my voice. So sorry for that, and thank you again for attending this session. It was a nice session, and